The Alliance for Zero Extinction is a coalition effort to halt the loss of species that are on the brink of extinction globally. You can find more about AZE, or the Alliance for Zero Extinction, at www.zeroextinction.org. The American Bird Conservancy works currently as the chair of AZE, which is a coalition of 80 institutions worldwide. Here you can see some of the groups, ranging from small institutions working on species at a very local level to large multinational nonprofit groups who have all joined in together to, in the effort to curb species extinction across the globe. I'll be talking about the definition of the Alliance for Zero Extinction, what makes an AZ site or species, followed by some of our international policy work on a global scale, and examples of site protection, such as this photo of the dusky star frontlet in Colombia, where the American Bird Conservancy is working with Fundación Pro Aves to protect habitat for this critically endangered species. So there are 80 nonprofit partners that have signed a memorandum of understanding and are voluntary members of AZE, and they're headquartered in 32 countries, although the operations and conservation efforts occur at many more countries. And there's a steering committee that is representing 4 continents, and including India, Brazil, Peru, Mexico, the United States, etc. This is a picture of the Palila from the Hawaiian Islands in the United States. AZE sites are made up of species that are endangered or critically endangered, that have been listed by the IUCN Red List, and these sites are the last remaining places on Earth for these species. There's a picture of Cozumel. It's a pygmy raccoon on Cozumel Island in Mexico. And here's a map that was produced by the Alliance for Zero Extinction members of all 587 sites with 920 species, representing taxonomic groups of mammals, reptiles, amphibians, conifers, which is the only plant group, reef-building corals, and birds. There are many taxonomic groups that have not been assessed globally by the IUCN, and so are therefore not included in AZ, but we do hope to include fishes and other plants, for example, invertebrates at some point in the future. There was an original data update in 2005, and then this was the first update of that original data set was done in 2010. And some species fell off the list because we found that the species was more widespread. There were a few conservation successes as well, where species were downlisted, but in the majority of species remain on the list and are continued to be in peril of extinction. Here's a web shot of a screenshot from the website zeroextinction.org, where you can search that map through an interactive live map and search species by country. So if you're interested in what species occur in your country, you can find out that information, as well as partners. There are many conservation priority tools, and the Alliance for Zero Extinction overlaps with many of them, which is one reason why there's buy-in and membership from large nonprofits as well as small nonprofits, because we can all agree that AZ overlaps with these other priority setting tools. Key biodiversity areas encompass AZEs, and important bird areas. Sites that are important only for birds also overlap with the lines for zero extinction sites. And we've worked closely with BirdLife International and Conservation International, who have led the KBA and IBA process to use the same naming system. So when an AZE and an important bird area or key biodiversity area are the same place, they share the same name as well. So we're not duplicating conservation priority exercises here. We're getting at the most important site within a KBA to start work, because sometimes those KBAs are quite large geographic areas, and it helps to know that that important site to prioritize action. Approximately half of AZ sites have some level of protection, but a good number have no protection at all, and that is outlined in, those sites are outlined in a recent analysis in the journal, online journal +1. Here you can see over the last several decades, the average area protected by AZEs of AZ sites is slightly greater than the sites that are completely protected. Although protected areas have a growing trend of creation, more countries are creating protected areas throughout the world. AZ site protection has not kept pace, and so we want to remind the global community the importance of prioritizing these sites first. Here's a subset of birds in the Americas, just to give viewers an idea of how many species might be found in a country. The United States has 16 bird AZ sites that we here at the American Bird Conservancy use to prioritize our work. Many AZ members use this list as a way to prioritize our work, followed by Colombia, Brazil, Mexico, etc. This is a picture of the Santa Marta bush tyrant in Colombia, which is restricted to the Santa Marta mountain range in northern Colombia. The fastest way to avoid 100 vertebrate extinctions, here's a proposal that by protecting these less than 10 sites globally, we could prevent 100 vertebrate extinctions. Many in the Sierra de Juarez, for example, in Mexico, you have multiple amphibian species that are all found on one mountain, and we could have an enormous impact through our conservation efforts at relatively few sites. A recent paper by Frank Larson, Tom Brooks, and Will Turner in +1 online. You can read more about the benefits at AZ sites. Climate change mitigation through the avoidance of carbon dioxide emissions from deforestation is one enormous benefit. You can imagine that the geographic isolation that has given rise to these species is also results in fairly interesting isolation of other geographic features. The forests are disproportionately protected in these sites. There's more forest cover compared to a random selection of sites. So climate change is one enormous benefit, as well as the freshwater services. These sites are often at higher elevations and provide water to downstream cities and towns. There's an option value for future use and benefit. AZ sites protect these unique species that are more distinct phylogenetically. Their genetic variation is disproportionately higher, and so there's this possibility that species, AZ species, could provide medicinal value to humans, as well as cultural diversity. There are linguistic diversity correlates to AZ sites. There's more languages spoken at AZ sites than a random selection of sites throughout the world. So indigenous cultures are and indigenous languages also would benefit rather from conservation of these sites. We're working at an international policy level to protect, to encourage countries to protect their AZ sites. There's a memorandum of understanding with the Secretariat of the Convention in place, and AZE has. We're working to have AZE incorporated as an indicator for countries to track their progress towards this international treaty. And national alliances have been formed in several countries in an effort to elevate AZ's status, working with government agencies as well as nonprofits. Brazil, for example, has 40 nonprofit members, but working closely with the government has a legislative decree from the Ministry of Environment recognizing the importance of AZEs. Colombia, Mexico, Peru, and India have also followed suit, and we look forward to those countries perhaps including AZE in their criteria for creation of protected areas in the future. Here's an example of one species that we've been working on, the yellow-eared parrot. You can see it's in the insignia, the municipal insignia on the top left of the screen includes the yellow-eared parrot. This bird has been adopted as a natural patrimony, a natural part of the natural heritage of this place, and went from several hundred, or rather just 100 individuals to now well over 1,000 individuals through reforestation, artificial nest boxes, pride campaigns, land protection, as well as an innovative payment for watershed services where upstream landowners who are protecting forests are paid by downstream users for the protection of water. The Miller bird translocation is another example of an AZ species we're working on at the American Bird Conservancy with government agency partners, including the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, among others. This bird is restricted to Nahoa Island and is recently been translocated to Laysan Island, hundreds of miles away. And in 2012, several birds fledged, which is excellent news, and there's funding in place for a translocation later in the fall in 2012. So we expect to continue to see good results. Here's a map illustrating the distance between these two islands. Laysan Island, coincidentally, is part of the historic range of this bird. And so we're reintroducing it to its native habitat. The Palila in Hawaii is restricted to Mauna Kea on the Big Island, and fencing the Palila critical habitat is the immediate goal, thereby removing ungulates and predation pressure from cats and other invasive species. Already 6 miles of the fences have been built, and many more miles are planned, and ongoing predator control and habitat restoration are underway. And to conclude the presentation, I wanted to give an idea of the importance of protecting species that are imperiled. There's a sense that spending money and limited conservation resources on species imperiled is perhaps not worth it. Well, to dispel that rumor, I have a few slides indicating recovery and dramatic recovery. This bald eagle in the United States was down to perhaps as low as 800 individuals, and now it's a very common bird throughout its range. The whooping crane, which is the only AZ species that has 2 sites. Its global population goes from the United States to Canada and back, and there are ongoing efforts to reintroduce this species in the east, and the bird is experiencing a wonderful increase. The Lear's macaw in Brazil, working with Biodiversitas, American Bird Conservancy has successfully created a private reserve in Canudos, and that site has augmented the global population as well as reduced the IUCN threat status from critically endangered to endangered. The yellow-eared parrot, which was mentioned earlier, also was its IUCN threat status was reduced from critically endangered to endangered thanks to conservation. And finally, the Laysan duck, perhaps the most extreme example here, where there were only 7 individuals at one time. This species as showing signs of recovery. So if you are interested in finding out more, please go to www.zeroextinction.org. You can email us, join the effort with other AZ members, and participate.